human is being sympathetic and empathetic, to be able to understand the other person, not just by one's imagination, by the extension of one's own sensitivity. Confucian ethics is not rule-governed alone. It's not. It is very much rooted in human feelings, and must be extended beyond the social context, hopefully to reach the highest manifestation of human self-actualization is the unity between Helen and human. We talked about it a lot in the Doctrine of the Mean, in the Great Learning, even he mentions. So it's not rule-governed. It is different from the moral reasoning of Immanuel Kant, and it's also different from utilitarianism. So the general rules are important, but they have to be subsumed under something situational, specific, and concrete. There's no question about the fact, another feature is that both Confucianism and feminism place a great deal of emphasis on human relationships, relatedness, connectivity. This has to do with what people call, I think it may be gender bias, about the mothering instinct, the care for children, the care for others. And sometimes communication is more important than the group orientation or group effort to a certain kind of definable or definite goal. So relations are not simply means to an end. Relations are intrinsically valuable. We just like to talk to other people, like to interact, like to form a community, like to spend time communicating. So it's intrinsic rather than extrinsic. But some people argue against the position, also somewhat persuasively, that care ethics is too generalized to accommodate the Confucian concern for a specific situation or specific role for the concrete situation. They use Analects as a good example. All the answers that Confucius used to respond to questions from his students are very specific, very concrete, even a response in a unique situation. But that does not mean that answer itself is only situational. So I basically argue against the position that Confucianism is a situational ethics. It is situational, but it's not situational ethics, because the assumptions, each answer to a specific question is generalizable or even universalizable. The intention is not simply to be specific, even though the answer is specific. The intention is to say it is a heuristic device that it is meaningful, not only beyond specific situation, meaningful universally. So the concrete way to get to a more universal or general situation is very much of the Confucian style. Whereas the care ethics does not take that into consideration very much. It's a thick description of all other human beings, and the care has to be spread. The Confucian notion of extending from the self to the family and beyond, normally care ethics, people who subscribe to care ethics do not pay particular attention to. So one is a very differentiated ethics, despite the fact it is universal and even definitely universalizable. The other one is not. The other one is care ethics takes into consideration a concrete human relationship, perhaps between mother and child, but not as constraining as the basic 5 relationships within the Confucian tradition. You have no choice in the Confucian tradition in terms of your biological relationships. You cannot choose your parents, and that is commonsensical. And that has a lot of ethical and moral weight on the person. If the father is totally abusive, it is your responsibility to try to change the situation. You help out. But you cannot, not only legally, sociologically, but even psychologically, to totally distance your parent as if that relationship, because of the lack of real interchange, can be eliminated. You know, that relationship is a powerful one. That's true with siblings. And so in the care ethic approach, friendship, even between a parent and child, friendship is the most important kind of relationship. If friendship is no longer maintained, then a true relationship, even between people who are relatives, can be sacrificed, sometimes ought to be sacrificed. Now, it's not a conflict, but it's a radically different way of approaching this. Is what now is being advocated as role ethics. This is Confucian ethics, based upon the specific role you play. Play is not necessarily the right expression, just based upon the role you assume, without, you can say you assume the role because of the various kinds of constraints, but the role is also your identity. And that identity is never something you try to achieve, you try to attain. You know, identity in this sense is not a state you try to search for. It is a description of who you are at a given moment. You are always the daughter of your parents, or the sister of your sibling. If you are a member of a profession, your role as a lawyer, a medical doctor, a scientist, a teacher, a musician, or an employee or employer, these are roles that define your identity. You don't get out of your role and try to find your identity through internal self-reflection or internal self-cultivation. And this, of course, is a classical case of using the Confucian principle of the rectification of names. And if you assume a different role, meaning a particular name is attached to you, then it is your responsibility to live up to the aspiration, which is not only yours, but perceived by others as what you ought to be. So who you are and what you ought to be could give you a sense of aspiration in terms of self-cultivation, of self-realization. The more you become proficient in assuming the different kind of roles you assume in a society, the more you be considered as cultivated. And a cultivated person is a person who is critically aware of his or her role in the complex constellation of social interactions. Now, there are problems with this. Another position, which is also extremely prominent, is that Confucian ethics is a form of virtue ethics. Virtue ethics from the Aristotle's tradition is the necessity of internalizing both skills and knowledge. And all virtues, and none of the virtues,